Oh boy, today is the day we go into the ultimate breakdown of my top regular show episodes of all time. Yeah, this is gonna be a long video, but every time I tried to make this list shorter, I just kept adding on episodes. You see, this is my favorite cartoon of all freaking time, and it was so hard making this list because I had to leave out great episodes for greater episodes. Also, you may see some episodes you love that aren't on this list. Do not get butthurt because at the end of the day, this is my personal opinion and just the episodes I connected with a little bit more. I should also mention we won't be including any specials because those are obviously written better, given that they are longer and have more time to develop a plot. So yeah, that means no Terror Tales, no Exit 9B, pretty much anything longer than a typical regular show episode, I won't put it in this list. We gotta keep it fair, so I'll only include regular smegular episodes. But yeah, let's dive into it. First on my list, we have a Skips in Time. This episode takes place in season 5, episode 6. It starts off with Tecmo inside of his storm chasing car listening to a radio emergency alert system, and it was saying a tornado was on the way. As Tecmo gets on top of his car to take pictures, he sees what appears to be an unconscious person inside of a hot air balloon. We are then taken back to the park as Benson directs everyone inside the tornado shelter under the house before the tornado comes. Benson thought Mordecai and Rigby grabbed some emergency supplies, but it turns out it was just a box of pizza pouches. Bruh. Now this is when this mysterious guy from the hot air balloon crashes in the park. We soon discover that this is Skips from the 18th century, so his name was Walks because we all know this was back then before the death of Skips' first love, and before he would change his name to Skips. Walks and his friend Samson were engaging in their favorite hobby, storm chasing. He explains that he got too close to the tornado and got sucked in, and that was pretty much the last thing he remembered. I love these type of regular show episodes that start off with action from the jump. It would immediately pull me in and I wouldn't be able to stop watching. Now the thing about Walks now being in the same time as Skips is that in 24 hours time will catch up to them and a whole chain of events will never take place. This would then lead to Skips aging rapidly and dying, so the guys have to track down this huge tornado and get Walks back to his right dimension, because as you can see, Skips literally starts dying. Mordecai and Rigby have to get Walks to the very center of the tornado, and there he will find a portal hole. What makes this episode even better is that Walks ends up stealing Mordecai and Rigby's pizza pouches and they start fighting over them. Hilarious. Like bruh, Skips is literally over there dying and these guys are worried about some pizza pouches. This was too funny. Now they do end up returning Walks to his right time, and at the end when everything returns to normal, Skip shows the bros his attic filled with all the legendary items from their adventures over the years. Even the Playcoat Orange Boy he killed Rigby with. Yeah, that was like the first thing I noticed. Bruh. Next on my list we have Prank Callers. This episode takes place in season 1, episode 9. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby want to prove that they are good prank callers by pranking the master prank caller, but they end up getting transported into the freaking 80s. This episode was amazing. It begins with Mordecai and Rigby chillaxing, watching funny internet videos about prank calls. After this, they get the idea to start making prank calls themselves, so they start prank calling everyone in the park, and this was freaking hilarious. They were having some good old bro time. That is, until Benson destroys the house phone in rage. Jeez, Benson, have a sneaker, my guy. The guys then get two of Pop's old cell phones and decide to put on these ridiculous helmets made of aluminum foil so they wouldn't get brain swelling. Yeah, according to Pops, this was a possibility. Now this is when things get really interesting, when they challenge the best prank caller of all time, the master prank caller. Mordecai tries to hit this man with the old pizza delivery joke, but he completely shits on this man. What? You got owned, son? He then does the exact same thing to Rigby when he tries to avenge his bro, but this time they make him angry and he tells them to stop calling or they were going to be sorry. Mordecai had wanted to back down, but Rigby didn't want to get sunned again. So after many more attempts and failures, they get a call from the master prank caller himself, who says the 1980s called. They want their cell phones back. He pranked these guys so hard they get sent into the 1980s. Bro, how can anyone everyone not like this episode? While watching this for the first time, I was always on the edge of my seat because you just never know what's going to happen next in regular show. The master prank caller appears and he was this terrifying huge cell phone with legs, and this just leads to Mordecai and Rigby pulling everyone in their mess, and now all the guys have to escape this huge phone and manage to get out of the 1980s. Also, we might have seen High Five Ghost as a human before he died. Yeah, that's creepy. What do you guys think about this episode though? Let me know in the comments. Next up, we have Skips versus Technology. This episode takes place in season 3, episode 15. In this episode, Skips tries to learn how to use a computer when Mordecai and Rigby need him to fix error 220, a virus that has infected the house computer. Yeah, you see, Skips tried to destroy this computer the first time he saw these errors. He tried to explain to the bros that he had been around the block a few times and had stated it was something evil lurking inside the computer, but they beg him not to smash it, and Mordecai tells him it's fine, as it was okay that he couldn't fix everything. Now, I really appreciate Skips in this episode for actually trying to educate himself on computers, even though he does make things worse. Skips would then make his final attempt at trying to resolve the problem, but these dweebs weren't really good teachers. This results in Tecmo coming out and catching up with Skips. You guys know this is also Samson from the previous episode, so yeah, they return to the park, as this was the guy Mordecai and Rigby had called to fix the problem in the first place. And if you have seen this episode, then you know this virus gets completely out of hand, especially after Tecmo plugs himself into the computer and discovers this error 220 was actually the Doomageddon virus all along. And in this episode, this virus takes over Tecmo and tries to kill everyone. It was freaking awesome. Next on my list, we have Ace Balthazar Lives. This episode takes place in season 4, episode 14. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby want to reunite a famous band when they think the lead singer, who was presumably dead, is alive and living in the park. Man, who remembers this amazing episode? This episode begins with the bros chilling on the couch, with Mordecai complaining about the way Rigby eats his oats. This man Rigby. But yeah, the guys were watching an interview about the band Adrenaline. This interview shows how the leader of the band, Ace Balthazar, loved to crash things and had crashed a truck for their band. Mordecai was saying he wished he had gotten the opportunity to see them play. The interview continues saying after Ace died in a crash, his body was never found. They then show people claiming to have seen him around and shows a video of the night at the park. Yeah, apparently this was him. So Mordecai and Rigby head out and eventually find him. This man definitely looks like Ace, but after the guys ask him about it, he denies it. Yeah, the bros brush this off thinking he just had brain damage from his crash, but if you have seen this episode, you would know this actually wasn't the real Ace Balthazar. Of course, Mordecai and Rigby didn't know this, but they soon find out after the real Ace comes back from the dead. After the fake Ace goes on this rage crashing and smashing everything, the real Ace Balthazar crowns him the new and improved Ace. Yeah, except this man couldn't play the guitar, so the real Ace steps in and the bros rock out. Yeah, this was awesome, especially because Mordecai and Rigby got to see this real band play together with the dead Ace Balthazar. Next up, we have Gary's synthesizer. This episode takes place in season 7, episode 23. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby unplug some cables to an old synthesizer, and they have to travel to the planet of Synthos with Skips in order to reconnect them and bring Gary back to life. After seeing this episode for the first time, I knew that at some point this would be in my favorites list. Yeah, it just hits different, and the music we get in this episode is fantastic. It begins with Mordecai and Rigby helping Skips clean his garage. The bros see this synthesizer and just start going crazy, unplugging all type of cords. Apparently this device projected Gary's image, and these cords had to be in a specific order for that to occur. Yeah, and since they mixed them all up, Gary's physical image pretty much diminished. His conscience still resides in the synthesizer, but until they put the cables back in order, his physical appearance will be no more. I like this plot, even though I feel Gary keeping his synthesizer in Skip's garage was kinda stupid. I gave it a pass since it leads to an amazing episode. So yeah, since Mordecai and Rigby couldn't remember the correct pattern, they are forced to travel to Gary's home planet Synthos to retrieve this pattern. Upon entering this planet, they are greeted immediately by the king and ruler David. While on the way to to David's office, he explains that all the citizens, who are referred to as Synthians, play music in perfect harmony. The thing about this though is that if you dare to play in Discord, which David considered abnormal, you would be jailed and blasted into the sun. Yeah, sounds like a fun place to reside. Towards the end of this episode, Gary and David have this amazing battle and we get great tunes out of it. I really enjoyed this episode and honestly it's beautiful to watch. Next up we have Party Horse. This episode takes place in season 6 episode 23. After a horse with a love of partying crash lands on Earth, Mordecai and Rigby learn that he has to pass his US history exam or else he can never party again and the freaking planet was going to get destroyed. Man, I love when these outside characters come in and they're actually good characters. Party Horse is definitely one of my favorite outside characters. He also appeared in another episode, Return of Party Horse, an episode I loved as well, so I'll be grouping these two into the same slot to make room for other things. This episode begins with Mordecai and Rigby getting burgers from a food truck when Benson starts yelling at them for not filling a pothole. Before eating the burgers, they are interrupted by this anonymous object falling from the sky, which turns out to be this alien stallion horse from outer space who loves to party. After waking up, we discover the reason Party Horse was there. He stated on his planet, partying wasn't just some hobby, it was a way of life. On his planet, everyone just parties all day until it came to school. Yeah, there was none of that going on there. In his school, they learn US history and have to take a US history test. The horse explains that he escaped by using the "I have to go to the bathroom" excuse. Yeah, that's crazy. Imagine asking to use the bathroom at school, but instead of returning with the hall pass, you just get inside a rocket ship and blast off to a totally different planet. Not gonna lie, if I had this option available back in school, I'd definitely take it. So yeah, the bros spend their afternoon helping this alien Party Horse learn history so he can pass his test. And I don't know about you guys, but a blue jay and a raccoon teaching a stallion US history definitely gets a thumbs up in my book. What really made this episode good was that his US history teacher had threatened to blow up Earth if he couldn't pass this test. Yeah, this episode was pretty intense, and pretty much after seeing this, I wanted more of Party Horse. This man Party Horse can have a beer with me anytime, and I don't even drink beers. Next on my list, we have High Score. This episode takes place in season 2, episode 7. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby try to earn respect by increasing their skills on Broken Bones, an arcade game in a coffee shop. When I tell you guys, this episode hits hard with the nostalgia. This episode kicks off with Mordecai and Rigby complaining to Benson about the way he pays them. These guys were getting paid in plastic bags with change and everything. The disrespect, especially since Skips got paid with an actual check. Yeah, I guess Benson respected Skips more. Mordecai gets pissed and decides he needs a break, so the guys head down to the coffee shop, but are almost ran over by these two kids. The bros were saying they should demand more respect and people respected people who were good at things. They didn't notice the kids who almost ran them over were gathering a crowd around this game called Broken Bones. To get more respect, Mordecai says he was going to kick these kids' butt in this game, but this man ended up getting negative points. Bruh, how does one... You know what? Never mind. After this, the guys vowed to get good at the game, so they spent some time on Broken Bones and had gotten pretty good. They even beat this one guy who low-key insults them, but nevertheless, it was respect. Benson had also caught the guys going off on them and tells them if they weren't back at the park in 2 minutes, they were fired. Man, I totally forgot these guys were on a freaking lunch break. But yeah, they tell Benson to fuck off and continue plowing through the competition. Person after person, they beat them silly. Nobody could touch the bros in Broken Bones. Well, maybe these kids could. The bros get their rematch and crush these two little losers. They were even close to breaking the high score, which was held by Garrett Bobby Ferguson. Yeah, he made his way down after they break his world record to proclaim he didn't care. I mean, it's not like it was the universe record or anything. Yeah, apparently he held that record too. After this man grows body parts, he goes head to head with the bros in Broken Bones to see who was the best, and even though he tried to cheat them out of the title, they managed to get the record thanks to having an extra life. Is this episode in your top 10 or 20? Let me know down below. You know you want some Broken Bones. Next up, we have a journey to the bottom of the crash pit. This episode takes place in season 5, episode 19. In this episode, Benson tells the guys they have to fill up the crash pit, so they try to have one last crash caught on tape. But when they execute the crash, they realize that the video camera went down with the car, so they have to go get it back. Muscle Man had brought in his old high school car so they could crash it in the pit. They filled the trunk with dynamite and pushed this old junk to the limit. This is when we get this iconic scene of Rigby bailing from the car as they close in on the pit. This was hilarious. I swear, as a kid watching these episodes, I would feel like I was one of the bros. That's the beauty of regular show. Now everything was going good until they realized they left the park camera in the car. Mordecai says they can just replace it until they find out it costs $5 grand. Yeah, good luck with that. So they head down to the crash pit to retrieve the camera and hear this creepy laughing with these little footsteps. This episode starts to get really eerie, and I love weird episodes like this. Now what made this episode really intense is that Benson was gonna go ahead and fill the pit up, not knowing the bros were still down there. This was kinda terrifying, and the thought of getting closed in underground. Now when exploring the cave, the guys discovered these weird blue-skinned creatures that enjoy watching Rigby's funny clip. Apparently they were the Carlocks, creatures that live in the remains of old destroyed cars, and they didn't want to return the camera. So after they managed to retrieve it back, they are chased through this huge underground cave. Benson had also started the process of filling this hole up while the guys were still down there. I had so much adrenaline while watching this episode, unsure if they were going to escape or not. It was a pretty solid episode in my eyes. Next up, we have Thomas Fights Back. This episode takes place in season 5, episode 34. In this episode, Thomas finds out Benson was going to fire him, so he tries to prove to Benson that he is useful by creating and executing a plan to get back at the park's stolen statue. Ah yes, because getting fired wouldn't go over well with his boss, since this man was undercover the entire time. Man, that still surprises me all these years later. Now, as we all know, in this episode, Benson was considering firing Thomas as he had stated he was spending too much money on his internship program. While Benson was in the middle of firing Thomas, he's informed by Mordecai and Rigby that the park statue was stolen again by this man Gene, the owner of the rival park. I swear the prank wars between these two parks could have been a whole thing in itself. I know I'm not the only one who really enjoyed these episodes. Yeah, so pretty much the entire episode, Benson tries to cast Thomas aside, but after one of their plans failed horribly, Thomas pitches an idea to go undercover and gain the trust of Gene in order to take them down from the inside. Kinda like what he was doing to them. Man, that's kinda messed up, Thomas. Benson was a little reluctant at first, but finally gives in and lets this man Thomas prove himself worthy. So Thomas ends up following through on his plan and gains the trust of Gene as he maneuvers through the park over the next few weeks. This man was literally flexing his spy skills in front of our face, and we had no idea at the time. A fool I was. Next on my list, we have a Fist of Justice. This episode takes place in season 3, episode 24. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby have to do Skip's work for the day when he cashes in a coupon they gave him on his birthday. I've talked about this episode on the channel before, so we're gonna briefly cover this one. This episode begins with a meteor with a pair of eyes on it flying through space. The scene then changes to Mordecai and Rigby playing alley fight dudes when Skips comes in wishing to collect on a coupon that would make Mordecai and Rigby do all his chores for the day. Yeah, he got this as a last minute gift from them on his birthday 6 months ago. See, that's what you guys get. Skips would also reveal that if his chores aren't done, then the world would come to an end, and he wasn't joking. You see, Skips would meet up with this evil villain named Chlorbang every 157 years to fight, and he pretty much had to win this battle every time they fought, or the world would perish under his control. Yeah, and unfortunately his fingers were broken from trying to help Mordecai and Rigby carry a piano earlier. This would then lead to the bros having to step in his place and defeat this evil doer. This episode was pretty awesome, and we finally learned the reason why Skips was immortal in this episode as well. It was to fight Chlorbang, the Destroyer. So yeah, are you a fan of this episode? Let me know down below. Alrighty, next up we have But I Have a Receipt. We have also covered this on the channel before, so let's just briefly cover it. The reason this made my top episode list was probably because of the simplicity of the plot, to be honest. How relatable it was. Yeah, things do get pretty crazy in this episode with the guys having this imaginary battle with this game store nerd. But in reality, the plot is very simple. You see, the bros just wanted a simple refund for a boring game they had just bought the previous day. And of course, the store owner wouldn't give them one. You know what this reminds me of? Me buying a $60 new game from GameStop only to try and return it the next day and get offered under half the money you just gave them for that game. Yeah, as a kid watching this, in my eyes, this guy was a GameStop employee and I wanted him to perish. So yeah, after not giving the bros a refund, they start telling everyone who were waiting in line how trash the game was, which leads to the store losing customers. Oh, and let's not forget they got clowned at game night for bringing this trash. They then get sucked into this imaginary all-out battle with this guy having to use abilities and knowledge from the game to defeat each other. This was freaking awesome and I'll never get tired of this episode. Next on my list we have The Night Owl. This episode takes place in season 2 episode 22, and honestly this has to be one of my favorites, even from my favorites list, if you know what I mean. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby team up with Muscle Man and High Five Ghost to win a radio contest, but the contest creator wants to turn them against each other instead to keep the contest going longer. This episode, like many regular show episodes, started off super simple with the bros chillaxing, drinking some sodas. They were listening to the radio and this guy named the Night Owl was supposedly giving away a brand new muscle car, and all you had to do was be the last one standing on the catwalk of the WHOZ billboard. Sounds simple if the guys team up, because why wouldn't they? I mean, there's powers and numbers. So yeah, this contest was taking place tomorrow at noon and the guys were off work, so why not give it a go? The guys head down to the contest and it seems it had already started. They even thought ahead and bring a tent. Now what you'll notice throughout this episode is that the guys are pretty much cheating, finding unique, annoying ways to get rid of all their competition. Yeah, I'm gonna turn a blind eye to it just because it's the bros. That muscle car is pretty nice. Now this is when things get really interesting in this episode. After being informed by one of the crew members that all the bros were gonna share the car, the Night Owl shows his dark side. Since his ratings were starting to go up for the contest, he devises a plan to turn all the guys against each other, lying to all of them and telling and pinning them against each other. This leads to the guys arguing and trying to force each other off the billboard, and I can't lie, it was pretty hilarious. The Night Owl then takes extra precautions to make sure the contest doesn't stop. Yeah, this was pretty crazy. So much time had went by. I bet Benson was like, where the fuck are these guys? The plot went left fast. The guys were now frozen in the freaking future. After realizing they were tricked by the Night Owl, they have to escape this weird museum before being frozen again. We get this epic escape scene with the guys being chased by futuristic cops in the prize muscle car. It was freaking awesome, and the Night Owl looked super dope as a villain. Everything about this episode just screams amazing, to be honest. They were able to escape and travel back to the first day of the contest. Amazing episode. Next up we have Go Viral. This episode takes place in season 2 as well, episode 26. This episode has a special place in my heart, like many other episodes from season 2. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby make a bet with Muscle Man and High Five Ghost to see who can get the most views on their internet videos in 1 week. This all started when Mordecai and Muscle Man were arguing over their computer, with Mordecai saying it was their turn. Muscle Man was telling him to chill, being that he still had 5 minutes left. Yeah, and everyone was laughing at this internet video they were watching. Well, everyone except Mordecai. He thought it was pretty lame, but then Muscle Man says, if it's lame, why does it have so many views, son? This is when everything starts. They end up making this bet to see who can get the most hits in 1 week, and whoever won got $10. Yeah, they were gonna be rich. Watching the bros do these funny stunts and watching Mordecai and Rigby get steamed was pretty hilarious. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost were 1 million views ahead, and Mordecai and Rigby only had until the end of the day to get a viral video. But after attempting the ultimate double jump with Pops, they send this man into a whole different dimension. What The fuck? Now, what was insane and interesting about this episode is that it was this weird universe where viral internet celebrities get stuck in a simulation where they were doing whatever they went viral doing forever. Yeah, this was crazy, bro. And I had never seen such a thing in a cartoon before. Regular show was coming hard in season 2, bruh. Episodes like this are so good and original. After defeating this evil internet warden, they free Pops and all the other viral internet sensations, and they all escape her madness. Oh, and if you watch this episode, then you know this man Wedgie Ninja is a freaking legend. He pretty much gave his life to save everyone. Yeah, rest in peace to the brave soul that was Wedgie Ninja. And Mordecai and Rigby also got their big video, a whole 2 million views and $20 from this loser. Yeah, because they had made it double or nothing. Next on my list, we have More Smarter. This episode takes place in season 2, episode 24. In this episode, Mordecai begins to make fun of Rigby for not having a high school diploma, so Rigby decides to drink a chemical that is supposed to make him smarter. Now, anyone who is a fan of regular show knows how much Mordecai used to mess with Rigby for not finishing high school, making Rigby feel lower and less superior. I mean, honestly, Mordecai isn't that smart either, he's just smarter than Rigby, so by default he looks like a freaking genius standing next to him. Now, in this episode, Rigby actually makes an attempt to go back to school and get his diploma, but this man just falls asleep in class and gets kicked out. Hilarious. So after getting back, he gets teased by Mordecai again. Bruh. He then heads upstairs to take some online diploma test with some guy narrating sounding like Mordecai. It's freaking hilarious. This man really couldn't answer that question. Even as an adult watching this shit made me laugh hard as hell. Rigby then sees this internet ad, Brain Max, which promises to increase your knowledge after drinking it. So like any normal person would do and ignore this, Rigby does the complete opposite, of course. He also ignores the daily limit of 1 tablespoon and just completely overdoses on this brain juice. This man becomes the smartest person in existence in just a few seconds. And as you can imagine, he couldn't wait to shit on Mordecai, and that he does. After making Mordecai look like a fool, he discovers this new Brain Max juice Rigby had been sipping and drinks some himself, therefore becoming smarter than Rigby because his original IQ was higher. I just love how these guys overdose on this juice and start having this smart off, trying to constantly outsmart each other. I also love how this juice seems to never run out even though they keep taking hella sips. You gotta love cartoons, man. I wish I could smoke a joint and it never get smaller. I'd never have to cop again. Bruh. But yeah, is this episode in your top 10? Let me know down below. Next up, we have a bunch of baby ducks. This episode takes place in season 2, episode 23. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I really love season 2. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby come across a family of ducks living in a fountain at the park. It begins really simple with the guys getting ready to clean the fountain, but in the process of draining the water, they discovered these adorable baby ducks. It appears their mother wasn't around, and they had also imprinted on Rigby. This was hilarious. Rigby as a mother. You gotta love it. You also gotta love it when they say the title of the episode in the actual episode. Yeah, but Benson had told the guys to find a place for the ducks to go and get right back to work. They take the ducks down to the animal shelter, and this is when we discovered these ducks weren't average ducks. Yeah, these were karate chopping ducks. They also played video games and were super intelligent. Yeah, you can't just give the ducks away to some loser after finding out how cool they were. They had to go to a good home, and the guys were determined to make sure of this. They put up flyers, and Rigby was telling Mordecai this will only attract creeps lurking around in the park, and it seems he was right. Whoa. Now this episode gets really interesting when the duck's mother calls and tells them she will be right over, but that weird old creepy guy returns and kidnaps the ducks. So the bros have this epic battle with this creepy guy, and it really gets dangerous when he pulls out this huge sword. The baby ducks then go into Power Ranger mode and morph into this huge buff duck. You gotta love the randomness of this show. You just never know what's gonna happen next. Yeah, and at the end of this episode, one of the ducks speak, and it was one of the coolest things he could have ever said. Hey Mordecai and Rigby, thanks. Bruh. I love this show. Next, we have Over the Top. This episode takes place in season 2, episode 21. I just had to include this on my all-time list. In this episode, Skips accidentally kills Rigby while arm wrestling and has to arm wrestle this man death to get him back. This was a fantastic episode. We all know it begins with this sad scene of Rigby officially being declared dead, and it was all over a petty arm wrestling match. It's a well-known fact that Skips is stronger than everyone at the park, which made this troll Rigby was pulling off even better if you ask me. I just saw it as him trolling Skips, while many others just saw it as Rigby cheating. Come on, man, it's a freaking arm wrestling match. Who cares if Rigby is cheating? Skips was totally in the wrong in this episode. And for those of you who might disagree, ironically after killing Rigby over using this play called Arm Boy, he like totally cheats at the end when he beats Death to bring Rigby back alive. The exact same thing he killed Rigby over. So yeah, this man Skips is a hypocrite. Next up, we have Slam Dunk. This episode takes place in season 3, episode 6, and it was incredible. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby challenge Muscle Man and High Five Ghost to a game of basketball for computer rights, pretty much so Mordecai can make Margaret a website. This is one of those episodes I feel you'd be crazy not to include in your all-time favorite regular show list. We even got this iconic clip of Margaret in this episode. Yeah, my guy Mordecai was simping, but hey, he was just trying to get laid. In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby get these incredible basketball skills from the god of basketball after they lose a game of 2-on-2 against Muscle Man and High Five Ghost. Now, he did try to teach these guys the legit way, but he soon realizes how trash they are, so he just gave them the skills. And after receiving these godlike basketball skills, they go lay the smackdown on Muscle Man and High Fives. He gives them the exact same skills, and we get this all-out 2-on-2 battle, and it was the greatest thing I've ever witnessed in this show, especially when Fives plays hurt and Muscle Man teams up with the god of basketball to stop the bros from making their last shot. This is one of the dopest regular show episodes of all time. Definitely one of my favorites, so I had to include it in my list. Next on my list, we have Gamers Never Die. This episode takes place in season 6, episode 21. After Mordecai and Rigby play an old video game, they earn a map that leads them to this special prize, Morimoto's Golden Game Badge. In my opinion, this episode was incredible and it's super underrated. Skips takes the bros to this huge mall and they continue on this little adventure of finding this golden badge. It's kinda like the guys had a Goonies episode. Even the music is kinda similar. Also, what makes this episode super interesting is the fact that Benson is on their trail the entire time, trying to find them because they had taken this man's car battery and used it to power the TV so they could keep the map up. Yeah, however they were doing that, they fall into this deep hole that leads to this beautiful underground passageway. Man, this show knows how to capture certain moments and just pull you in. Yeah, so they run into the same guy who was the keeper of the excellent hat. Yeah, remember that guy? According to him, the excellent diner was no more, so now he was just stuck with this gig. The bros head off and it seems Benson was getting close to finding them. Mordecai and Rigby continue on their journey and eventually find this hidden location that even had the dead body of Morimoto. The bros get their badges and everything was fine until this man Benson just busts in and grabs the entire bowl of badges, which you weren't supposed to do. You were only supposed to take one per player. Yeah, this episode is amazing and it finishes with some amazing visuals and peaceful vibes with Morimoto flying off into the sunset. How can you not love this episode? Alrighty, the last episode on my list is The Last Laserdisc Player. Like I said, these weren't in any particular order, so I'm not saying this is my number one episode, obviously. It just so happened to be the last thing on my list. This episode takes place in season 4, episode 30. I've fully talked about this one on the channel as well, so let's briefly cover it.
I'll also have it linked in the description.
In this episode, Mordecai and Rigby try to find a Laserdisc player so they can see the director's cut of a famous cult classic, but in the midst of this, they end up running into these VHS goons who were trying to keep VHS on top. This was a mafia-like crew who had completely wiped out the Laserdisc players. The bros then go on this amazing adventure to find the last Laserdisc player, while also trying to keep it away from the VHS goons. This is one of those jam-packed episodes that features a lot of fighting, shooting, and just overall action. You gotta love it. They also get to watch their Laserdisc in the end, so I was happy for the bros. But yeah guys, these are some of my top regular show episodes of all time, and I would like to know if any of these are on your top list. Also, if you made it this far in the video, you're one of my biggest supporters and I really appreciate you. So comment Goku Black so I'll know, and also so we can confuse everybody in the comments. But thanks for watching the video, and until next time, peace.